Hey everybody, it's Jared with the Next Level Podcast, and I'm being joined by my co-host, Mr. Taylor Ward. Of course, we were off last week. We sure as heck missed you, and so we have got an exciting episode in store for you today. We have got Mr. Michael Adler from Shades Mountain Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, as well as a product review and the dad joke of the day, so y'all stick around. Welcome to the Next Level Podcast. I'm your host, Jared, being joined by Mr. Taylor Ward. All right. How's it going, bro?
Let's go. We finished up.
He got a haircut.
I got cleaned up.
Yeah.
You may notice in the next segment that I was not cleaned up. How did that happen? I don't know. I'll leave it to you to figure out.
Man, we've been busy.
We've been hitting it.
We took a week off, and that was like our 1 month mark, and we had some exciting things in store. Schedules didn't line up. Our schedule was just crazy busy.
Yeah.
So
we were at a church all week this week.
Yes, man, it was exciting at Garywood Assembly of God,
AOG,
Garywood Church in Hueytown, Alabama, and some of our guys attend that church, and man, we had a great time. Pastor Jeff and Kyle, who is their worship pastor, and he also helps with the youth. Man, they kind of invited us in and let us kind of run wild and put them together a pretty good lighting system, and
it was really cool. We
stayed busy doing that and really took things to the next level, no pun intended.
But you can't be taking over my dad joke.
Oh. I don't know that I'm like worthy of like a good dad joke. I've never had a good dad joke.
Is there a good dad joke? Isn't that kind of the thing?
I don't know. I mean, the fire you have been bringing.
I have been bringing it.
At the end of every episode has people call me and they're like, the dad joke. Like, if you don't...
I've got a whole list here to be working through, so keep listening.
The things Taylor does in his free time. So yeah, we did Garywood, and that was a fun time, and
it was really cool to see that come together.
Yeah.
Like, fire up everything, get the haze rolling.
Yeah. I can't wait till, like I said, 2 of our guys who work with us go to church there, and really didn't go to church there when we, like, that connection came from my church, my pastor. Mm-hmm. They came over and toured CLC, and they were like, man, like, how do you do this? And I'm like, just a little bit at a time. And they were like, we want you to come over and look at our church. At the time, Jared King, who is actually helping produce the show today.
He's in the other room.
Big shout out to him. He actually came from another contact, and he started visiting that church, which landed us Parker Ellis, who just recently started working with us, and both of those guys are very musically talented, and play drums, play bass guitar, just have a big, huge passion and heart for worship, and that's really what we look for on a pretty daily basis, because this is what we do,
right?
You know, going and being a part of the local church, and just really trying to take their technology to the next level. Mm-hmm. Our guest today, Michael Adler, he super talented, like been all over the map when it comes to...
I didn't realize how much he had been around.
Yeah, and just getting to know him, a little backstory. Our on-site production side of our business, our live production side of our business, is very involved in a wedding venue that he has. Him and his wife had a passion for being able to see people on a pretty special day in their life, and kind of creating a spot that they can come and family and friends can gather, and so they built something literally in their front yard, and it holds about 250, 300 folks, and he continues to add to it. But his full-time gig, and I don't even know how he does the wedding venue side of things, but his full-time job is the worship pastor of a church that I don't know what we may find out, but it's definitely in the 6, 7, 8,000 seat capacity range. I mean, it is a massive monster church.
I haven't been inside, but when we've driven by, I can tell it's a big boy.
My grandparents have always gone to church there, and so we always had Thanksgiving that we would kind of get together when we were younger to always go over to their church and just attend one of their services and be with them. And wow, you get lost up in that church.
Yeah.
They recently had a renovation, and that's what sparked us to bring him onto the show, and so I'm excited to be able to talk to him and just kind of pick his brain. He's, like I said, he's done a lot of things from Hollywood to all sorts of musical things. Was in a couple of different groups and got locked into the church, and that's where we pick up the story as far as being able to kind of meet him. He's got a couple of sons that are very involved in other ministries, and so super excited.
He's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, what do we have? What do we have coming up in the days and weeks ahead?
Well, so we like we said, we just finished up Garywood. I know we have an install in Helena that the stuff's been ordered.
Yeah,
and getting ready to fire that one in there.
Man, I hope that comes. As we talked in previous episode with Joshua Curlett from Sound Pro in Texas, he brought to light a lot of different things in the supply chain. Like, you want to order something and you quote it out and you get the customer excited about it, and it's like, okay, we're going to wait 6 weeks. And then 6 weeks turns to 8 weeks and things like that. So, man, it's been a struggle to do it, and it's nice when customers are understanding of what's going on and everything. The next job we have, been waiting on it, and so got tracking information. Yay!
That's a win.
Yeah, you get the tracking information, and it's like, okay, it's one more step.
Yeah. Now Sound Pro wouldn't do this, but let's just hope it's not like the racking that we just ordered, where you get tracking information and you get excited and then it's the wrong thing, not once, but twice.
So, but there's only so much you can control.
Yeah.
And really staying on top of things, and giving clear expectations to the customers is
expectations and communication. Like, as long as I've had issues in the past with like technical support, repairs type things, and my biggest thing is just communicate with me. And that's what I want to do with our clients is, hey, as soon as I know something, you'll know something.
Yeah, absolutely. That's coming down the pipe, and we're super excited about that. Thinking back, Michael coming onto the show today, think back to Christmas and some of the things that he did, and really want to kind of dive into that and kind of pick his brain and just see what it takes. A lot of churches do some big things around Christmas time, and Christmas and Easter. It's like the Super Bowl of church.
Those are the two landmarks that you plan your calendar around.
That's right. Nothing else counts.
We talked about it with Noah too. How you a lot of times you implement new things around Christmas and Easter too.
Absolutely.
That way, if it doesn't work, you can say, "Oh, that was just for Christmas."
We recently had a meeting with our staff and just kind of the people that creatively put together certain things around those holidays, and like we're already like ramping for Christmas, like planning now. I can only imagine. Probably Shades Mountain is probably getting ready for their Christmas stuff, and that's going to be huge. But bringing that up, a lot of people in that same vein decide, oh, we're gonna upgrade, and we're gonna do some different things. And we've had some folks kind of reach out to us in preparation for that, and I think when it comes to those holidays, it's almost like you can kind of break into some new things. The install we had with Garywood this past week, I mean, me and Kyle were talking like, how is this gonna play out within your congregation? You got brand new lights you've never had. They're implementing a smoke machine into the mix, which is something that their church has never experienced before.
Yeah.
And one thing I do know is there's a lot of churches that in that process, they can do things that they wouldn't normally do any other time of the year at Christmas and Easter.
Yeah.
You can get away with a lot. Noah said that when we interviewed him. He was like, oh, yeah, we can definitely.
That was
because
the
if
case.
it doesn't work, whatever. Yeah. We'll go back.
Yeah. That was the case with an install we did over past CLC on Valleydale at First Christian, that they wanted it to be done, that they had a Advent season that they were preparing for Advent, and they wanted it to be done, and it was because they had a lot of virtual stuff happening and that they wanted to upgrade, and they set that as a goal time because that's such a booming time. And that's smart.
Yeah. Well, and there's like that fine line that you have to really ride. There's people within the church that have been there, and they don't want certain things to change. That's one of the questions that I feel like is something I want to bring to the table with Michael, because I see a lot of churches and they push the boundaries, and some churches, they have the congregation in mind. Some churches, want people to come in and have a new experience, hopefully put down their guard and, fall into what God has for them. There's ways of doing it the right way. There's ways of doing it the wrong way. I mean, everybody has their own take on it. I think everybody has their own opinion when it comes to that. My personal opinion is, minimize distractions. I think it ought to enhance, not take away.
Right.
Not pull people's minds away because flashy lights or tons of smoke or, terrible sound or whatever. So, Shades Mountain, we, like I said, for years have gone, and even after we didn't do that as a family, I still went back to see some of their productions. There's some awesome churches in Birmingham that do some high caliber productions. They're one of them.
Yeah.
And they do it in probably the most tasteful way. It's not all hype and big production, but they do have a lot of production, but they just do it in a very minimalistic way.
It's all about what message are we proclaiming and how can we get that message across.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
Yeah.
You know, even for churches that have higher production, we're still shooting to communicate that message.
Yeah.
And, you know, people have different communication styles,
Yeah.
but, you know, that's normal. And
there's a congregation, there's a community for everybody. There is churches out there that, in my humble opinion, is really flashy, you know, and then there's churches out there that they barely got a sound system, and there's something in between. You know, it doesn't matter what your belief is, you know, whether that's, you know, denomination or whatever, and then from there, there's different calipers of, you know, I wouldn't say calipers, that's a terrible way to put it, but you know, just, you know, a different way of being able to present the message, you know, lead people into worship and different things like that. So, which is great. I mean, just being in the world we're living in, you can pretty much, I mean, it's like going to Amazon. If you can't find it at Amazon, you probably don't need it.
right.
You know, and especially being down here in the South, I mean, there's tons of churches all over the world, but you can't throw a rock and not hit a church in the South.
Yep. Yep.
And every single one of them is completely different.
Yeah. I mean, there's a spot in Homewood where Trinity is. At that corner, you could throw a rock and hit 3 churches. You got Baptist, Methodist, and Episcopal.
Yep.
And all different, and all, you know, different denominations, but they're all there.
What's funny is, so our church is on Valleydale Road, and I want to say it's like, it's around like 5 miles from 65 to Highway 280, which is 2 major landmarks that people know. If you've ever been in Alabama, you know 280, you know 65. All right. In that area, we're one of the churches. There's 8 on that little stretch of road. And I'm like, there's churches everywhere.
All over.
And they're all different. So, anyway, we have a great relationship with just about everybody that we come in contact with. We try to do that, whether it lands us any business whatsoever. I mean, we love people and just be able to, you know, constantly have that rapport with them. We did do some work for First Christian, and they recently called us back for some upgrades that they're looking at doing. So we're excited about that. But just having that rapport with people and having them feel comfortable to be able to come back to us time and time again is really what we strive for. So, but we've got Michael coming onto the show, and that's going to be exciting. Can't wait to be able to talk to him. And after that, we've got product review and dad joke of the day. So y'all stick around. All right, welcome back to the Next Level podcast. I'm your host, Jared, being joined by Taylor, and we also have the one and only Mr. Michael Adler.
Hello, brothers.
All right, well, we'll jump right into it. Say a little bit about how we know Mr. Adler on our production team. We go to his wedding venue a pretty good bit and met him several years ago and started building a relationship and found out we have a ton of stuff in common.
Yes.
And a lot of that has to do with church and worship.
Yep.
And so love his heart and love his entire family. We have done stuff with his wife, who helps him run the venue, and we've also done things with one of his children at their Easter program. So it was pretty cool to be able to do that. So welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. And the one you mentioned, Jake and his wife. Jake is now the creative arts director at the Ridge Church in Des Moines, Iowa. So he's moved on, and we hate it, but he's he's where he's supposed to be. He's great. Really got a lot of skills.
So before that, he was at is it
Church at Liberty Park?
Church at Liberty Park. Mm-hmm. So so that was where we got to know him and did a lot of stuff. And I was actually thinking about having him on the show, and then he made the big post about his move a few weeks back, and man, it's we'll still have him on. We'll probably have him
one Zoom interview.
Yeah, we'll do a Zoom. He's he's got a great heart and really loves worship, which your whole family has really been a part of worship for a long time. Yeah. Kind of take us back to
Linda and I. Linda is a voice teacher, and we actually met singing and dancing on a television show in Hollywood. Our first and don't laugh, that's the truth. We in the 80s, Christian television was a big deal. PTL Club, TBN, all those, and that's kind of we were in the hub of all that. We traveled together in a group called Truth First, and then went. No, we didn't. We sang first. 3 years on the TV show. Oral Roberts Television was doing a variety show. We literally every Saturday night had a variety show, and then through the week we had live 5 o'clock in the a.m. makeup calls, and we would do a live TV broadcast every day, and then specials on a rotating basis with Hollywood acts. Barbara Mandrell's show at the time, we would swap with her. She'd do 2 weeks in the can at United Western Studios, and she would get out and often leave her special guest or their orchestra or their hair and makeup people or their props and design people. Sid and Marty Croft were our producers, and we lived in that space for about 3 years.
Wow.
And awesome. It was incredible. We then left that and traveled with a group called Truth, and then started having babies. And babies and buses at the time especially didn't work very well for us. So we had to get off the bus and have been in the local church since then.
Wow.
And have been using technology. We've been on one side of the camera or the other. In the Midwest, I did a lot of television commercials back in the day for Toyota. For IBM, I was the Swiss Valley Dairy Boy. Most of you probably already knew that about me, but there was a regional dairy in the Midwest, and I was the Swiss Valley Dairy Boy. Come to life was the theme, and it was all healthy and nutritious and outdoorsy and Midwesterny, and so I pitched yogurt and milk and cheese and all that. And there was a Swiss Valley girl, wasn't my wife. She was a little blondie from the Midwest. So yeah. IBM, Toyota, and Linda and I did a lot of jingles, a lot of recording work in studios. We've probably been in 30 studios in the U.S. over the years as vocalist for commercial work.
That's awesome,
man. And so you started having babies. You got off the bus, and where was the first church that you landed at?
Iowa, where Jake is. Yeah, not the same church, but our first church was a church that we had done in the rotation with Truth. And big church, small town, the town was Waterloo, and they were kind of the big place in town. So whenever we did anything musically, it was a part. And I've been doing this so long, you guys, that at that point I was editing my own work with a splicing block and a razor blade in reel-to-reel. So It's a ways back. So I've seen all their, ADAT, reel-to-reel, then ADAT, then, all digital. And then, so you hang around long enough, you see a little of everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's watching this, including me, is saying, what the heck? Man, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, so, you kind of got into the church scene, and we know you here in Birmingham, and talk a little bit about the church you're at now and what your capacity is there.
I've been here 20 years. As of about 3 months ago, we celebrated 20 years here, and for us, it wasn't really. I have to get a job. It really was. This is what I was equipped to do with my life, and I really kind of knew that from the beginning. But the church we're in now is the second church in a row that I've served in that I followed a 24-year music guy who retired. And so our first church was San Antonio, Texas. The first church of that scenario, a 24-year guy. He'd been at that church in San Antonio 24 years, big church in San Antonio called Castle Hills Baptist Church. And great guy, wonderful guy, but the cement was dry as far as the culture, the style, everything. And they hired us to come help them move into the next generation. So we did that for 9 years there. And then the pastor here in Birmingham had found out about our work in San Antonio, and his guy happened to be retiring after also 24 years. So we came here to do the same. And I inherited, used consoles and old boards, and I have a funny story real quickly. We came here with a Volvo wagon, and within months of being here, realized that the JBL horns that were hung in the ceiling of a 3,000-seat auditorium were not doing the trick, and made our first modification sonically up there. And one day I took one of those JBLs and strapped it to the top of our Volvo and hardwired it to my stereo in the car and drove to the hair salon that Linda was having her hair done with Earth, Wind, and Fire blasting out of this JBL sitting on top of my car. And just wanted to be a blessing to my wife, and that was that. So that was our first sound, reinforce sound change, really, the environment there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're at Shades Mountain, mm-hmm. and any of y'all that aren't from Birmingham, Shades Mountain Baptist Church is a fairly good sized church, and Michael is what's technically your
I'm the worship arts pastor, and that includes the film department, the tech side of things, which is all tech reinforcement, and the recording portion, and then we have choir and orchestra, and then graphics and arts. All of the things that sort of brand the church are mm-hmm. in my world, because they're all that creative space. We need to kind of interrelate with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, talk a little bit about what your week kind of looks like, week to week.
COVID or pre or post or actually back again. Yeah. There is no normal anymore.
Yeah.
And I told somebody yesterday that we have pivoted so many times. We are now officially ballerinas in this whole thing. It has been that.
Yeah.
So a typical week for us is Monday. We're always looking at Sunday, so that 7-day window we have is always kind of sitting there in front of us. We work out quite a ways. Tuesday afternoons is a creative team of about 8 of us that gather, including our pastor, and we talk about everything from the simple things like a sermon series branding to technology, what we'll use. We did a series pre-COVID that we had a wood lathe on one Sunday and literally turned out a table leg, and another Sunday had a potter with clay. Then we had the blowtorch doing glass blowing on a Sunday, and each of those things subsequently, and then a coffee thing. At the end of the series, we had literally a table with a glass and a pitcher and coffee. And that was the table setting where it was all the pieces of the body of Christ and our importance and what we come from. And so we use a lot of visual elements and then film to make that kind of come alive on the screen. So little pieces like that are always kind of coming and going depending on seasons and themes and all that.
Yeah. Well, one thing that reminded me when you were just talking was the incredible production y'all put on for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about that. There was a lot of stuff that went into it, both from a creative side, but as well as a production side. Talk a little bit about that vision and how that started to come to light.
With the limitations we had with COVID last year, we made up our mind in probably early July that we weren't going to go live with anything. And at that point, no one knew exactly what was going to happen. This is the first lap of COVID, and truly, it was not prophetic, but it came to be that in December nobody was doing things where we were gathering as a crowd. So we felt fortunate. So we put together a 56-minute televised broadcast that gave the essence and the heart of what we do in music, but it also told the story of the birth of Christ and that celebration. And it became a sort of a scroll at the bottom was a fundraiser for Christian Service Mission. We raised $75,000 by people watching that and calling in or texting in money while they watched. And we beat Wheel of Fortune in viewership that weekend. Wow. So, hey, that was kind of nice. Yeah.
So you now are the Pat Sajak.
I am Pat Sajak. Yeah. I didn't want to announce that, but here on this platform, I am now the new. I've only watched that show a few times in my whole life, so I better catch up a little bit.
Well, I just think it was incredible. Like, from a guy that, loves music, has a heart for worship, has obviously works in a very techie type of industry. The production and the thought and, the creativeness of what went into that. We talked in past episodes about how people's online presence, obviously y'all broadcasted this, but y'all had this on the internet for people to watch. And I think there's a lot of pastors that are, what do I need to be focused on? And I think, in a time of a pandemic, of COVID, of things like that, we have to really get creative in what we're going to put out there.
Yeah.
And I think, brag and give y'all honor to what y'all put out there, because it was top notch. And it was at a time where typically we would go to Shades and we would see a very well put together production in person.
Yeah.
And that wasn't an option.
Right. We had, I have to give a lot of credit where it's due. The last big project for one of my team members named Ethan Milner was this big project. And he was with us 8 years. We got him right out of college. He actually grew up in our church and just is an extremely gifted guy. With a heart for the church, and he has a company now called Cedar Creative, and it's just film what they do. We're bringing them back to do our Christmas special with us again this year. We had a recording 2 nights ago already. We began in May, but it's well down the road already. But to the one last year that you're mentioning, we had 3 platforms for performance. Drew and Ellie Holcomb were our musical guests, but the opening piece was the Alabama Theater, and Ethan was excited about a single camera shoot from the introduction of the song all the way till the opening of the curtain. And that's about a minute and 15-second piece that starts in the upper floor of the Alabama Theater green room, and boom, doo-doo, doo-doo, doo. God rest ye merry gentlemen, with an upright bass at the highest room up there, and this camera is working its way down and picking up cast members, and I'm walking through the screen, and then the stage manager's there, and a guy practicing his trumpet in one corner, blah, 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 coming down the steps again, dum. This whole little theme is going. Finally, when we break out, and then a guitar player, just as we get out the door, tuning it up, and he happens to be tuning it really cool, little riff, comes around the corner, and the curtain goes, and a giant big band. That's the opener, and it was just
epic,
just wonderful. Big band with a camera going right up at the trombones, bell, and just cool. And we did 9 hours on that one song. Wow. That was our Monday.
How was your Monday?
Yeah. Then we did. We had volunteers from the church build 3 side-by-side living room sets in one of our big auditorium rooms. We stripped the whole room so we could work there, and they worked for about 4 weeks, and they built living room sets so that the camera could finish a song and just roll on a rail. What are those things, you guys?
Dolly.
Dolly. Could dolly over to the next scene, and the next song starts, and it's right there, ready to go. So we did, I see this because this is what we did, but when you watch it again, and you can pick it up on YouTube anytime you want, or on Vimeo, it's pretty fun. And then Drew and Ellie were excellent with us, and then the third space was our main stage in our church.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I get a call from Michael. Actually, it was a text message, and it was just, so I knew he was doing this. And I just get this text message, hey, what are you doing this afternoon? and
can you shovel snow?
and when Michael just randomly calls, if it's not something to do with a venue, then something's up. And so it's like, well, I had some stuff to do. What do you got? Come to the movie theater. And they had a special premiere and got to meet a lot of the folks that were behind what they did, and we got to watch it for the very first time, and that was just I'll never forget that. Like it was so cool what y'all put together, but how you presented it was just top notch.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Top notch.
It really did a lot for me to hear your input, because I know you're going to respect and appreciate the kind of things that we worked hard to do. A lot of people, it would go over their heads maybe, but for another person who's artistic and technically driven, to see your eyes on it meant a lot to us. It was fun. And we rented the giant screen at the Lux on Lakeshore, so it wasn't just a theater. It was a theater with an epic sound and everything. It was wonderful.
Yeah. So. Well, that's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about Shades, and I know y'all have had, in the past couple of years, y'all have had some upgrades when it comes to AVL stuff, and I know you're very involved in a lot of the technical aspects. But when I look at you and just watch the service, come to a service, whatever the case may be. You really have a heart for worship. Mm-hmm. But I know that you really couldn't do what you do week in and week out if it wasn't for the AVL side of things. Yeah. So talk a little bit about what a Sunday morning looks like and really how this new renovation has played a huge role in that.
I do want to clarify that when we proposed to our church that we were going to gut the worship center that had been built in 1989 from the ground floor, it was a highly charged emotional topic that in church world it's a conversation that you want to approach gently and with grace and with understanding, and realize that there are some people who in their younger lives, as young families, sacrificed financially and gave to help build where that place was. And it was a glorious, beautiful, kind of a stately room, big organ pipes, big everything, and it was literally stripped to the studs, everything pulled out to the ceiling. They did the first week was 24/7 scaffolding building, 24/7. There's a round-the-clock scaffold crew. And they, from the floor to the ceiling, 5 floors, floor to ceiling scaffold everywhere. So they ripped the ceiling out, they ripped the walls, everything out. So it was a big, big decision. But I wanted to say that I've also led worship with Linda in Puerto Rico, where sitting on cinder blocks was the norm. And the decor was a string hanging over your head between 2 trees and bread wrappers as the kind of a decoration hanging above your head. And there was no PA, no sound at all. And to hear people there sing "This Is the Air I Breathe." I'm desperate for you. It kind of strips you down of any sort of Western pride that you may have over your gig or your stuff or your gear. It really is, the essence of it is where the Lord has called us together. He's there. He's in the middle of it. That said, in this current consumer culture, it helps you when your technology is spot on, because we're so used to seeing and viewing through a screen. We are so used to, all ages are used to it. So the level of expertise you bring to this is a tool, is a help. It doesn't make you a better person or a better worshiper, but it does help to bridge the things that we encounter in this culture. So we have brought giant screens, giant LED walls on both sides of a baptistry. We have mayor clusters everywhere, in the floor, in the ceiling, everywhere. Everything is in ears. The night before last, we did a recording session on stage with, I had 18 vocalists, and we did 3 layers of several songs to lay down a music bed for some choir things we're going to do down the road, where we'll add a full choir sound to it. So the technology options we have, and then you can take that song now in Pro Tools and hand it to another guy who will edit it and sweeten it and clip it and EQ and make it manageable, and then put it in a different format and put it here and then hand it to these guys. And so we have really, really good infrastructure of guys. Our front of house guy, you've met Rob Searcy, was in my youth choir when he was in 7th grade. So Rob has been in my life since forever, and he's really a pro. He travels with Natalie Grant, and he's traveled with a lot of great artists. His expertise is the voice and how it's broadcast. So it's a big blessing to us. So good people on your gear, and good gear is a big boost.
When it comes to team, and Rob's incredible. He's not the only one. Like, what kind of team takes to run a service at Ship?
Beside the people on stage, typically for us would be a producer. Often the producer is also the guy running the switcher. So we have multiple cameras, and depending on how our volunteer base is, that happened at weekend. You guys know what that means. Some guys in the Saturday night they'll call, I can't make it. So who's going to double up today or triple up on duties? Yeah. So sometimes producer is just calling the camera switches and someone else is running the switcher. Sometimes producer is that guy talking to our camera people, zoom in here, go tight there, go wide here, get ready for this. So that's up in the control booth. Then on the main floor, we would typically have 4 people, the front of house mix person, and then a lyric person, and then a lighting person, and then one person that's sort of a utility that can help run interference on things. We had an entire server go out 3 Sundays ago and had to start the service 5 minutes late, but our guys are literally robbing gear from one room, tying it into the main room, running down hallways, carrying stuff. And that's, behind the scenes, and the kind of skill set they have, that you all have, to do those kind of fixes last minute. It's killer. And then 5 minutes after, we're on and we're going and we're doing a thing. And these guys have this glazed look in their eyes like, what just happened?
They get through all that, and now they have to run a service.
Right. And be worshipful. So,
right.
Yeah. And so, we're really, really grateful. Ryan Maynard is great. Matthew Berry grew up at our church as a young guy, went to Florida and worked in the tech world at a big church there and came back to us. He's a huge, huge help. Jordan Cox is now the communications director. We have a department, communications, that does film, graphics, media, and social media.
That is awesome. So you talked a little bit about the choir and everything. I mean, a lot of churches have gotten away from choirs over the years, but you really are still pushing that, and I think it's pretty incredible. How many folks do you typically have with you on stage on a Sunday morning?
And again, that's we have pre-COVID and post-COVID numbers, but I would say last Sunday was our pastor's 24. After 24 years, he retired, and last Sunday was his last, and we had 128 or something maybe on stage. But that won't be a constant. That would be big moment. So maybe in the 80 to 110 range.
Wow,
something like that.
That's awesome. My grandparents go to Shades, and they've had a lot of health complications, so they haven't been in quite a while. But it was almost a pretty good ritual of us going Thanksgiving every year, and I just always looked forward to it. It's a fairly large church, a lot of people, but it takes me back to my days of when I was growing up and being in the Baptist church and having a choir and having an orchestra and just all the things. It's just it speaks to your culture, and it speaks to what you have developed. Obviously, you've got a great team that really supports you, and we talked about that on a number of occasions. But it's pretty cool, to really see that still driving, because as you mentioned, it's tough to find volunteers. That's not only the guys that run the soundboard, but having people up there to sing and in the choir and things like that. It seems to be a challenge across the board, but y'all haven't given up on it.
We talked about before we came on the air. We talked about the why of this, and the why of the big is pretty simple. It gives an exponentially greater amount of people a chance to have buy-in and ownership and a part. And when you put, and none of them in the choir individually are as good as they are collectively. And that's what the body of Christ looks like as well. We need each other. We can't do this solo. Going solo is antithetical to what Christ says about gathering together and iron sharpening iron and being better because I am with you. We're supposed to make each other better. And that environment of coming together as a large group is sort of a billboard. Here's what the church looks like, and we're a mess, and we're old, and we're young, and some are cool, and some aren't, and some whatever. This is what we look like, and take it or leave it. We are really good all together, and that's what that big stage full of people does every Sunday. Mm-hmm. It's a reminder that we're a mess, but together, man, we're pretty good, and it's thrilling.
Who is y'all's technical director when it comes to like the guy that oversees all your technology?
Rob was that. Rob Searcy. Rob is now IT and tech. He oversees both sides of that. So that the production manager is Ryan Maynard.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And he's got a pretty full plate, it sounds like. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's...
He's the guy running down the hall when his hair's on fire and Sunday morning is ready to start and something doesn't work. Right. Yeah. He's that guy.
So is he full time with the church?
Oh yeah. He grew up here as well. He was in when I came here. He was in 8th grade.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So he's gone through it.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Do you have any questions?
I have a couple. So we've talked about how AV helps set the stage, and also how you don't even need AV. So in your history of traveling and doing all these things in ministry, we've heard the good of how AV helps. What kind of stuff have you seen where it's been more of a detriment? Like something goes wrong, something that's caused a distraction, and how have you grown in those instances?
The funniest one, and we were talking about, if you're in this long enough, you've gone through every iteration of what technology has been. Mm-hmm. One of those iterations was the cassette accompaniment track, and there was an era where if you were singing a solo or even a choir song, there was a track on a cassette. It was a single song. You could flip the cassette. On the other side was a demo, the same song in demo world. Then technology got real crazy, and instead, in the cassette player, instead of having to take the cassette out and flip it around, they made the cassette player where the head would flip, and the cassette could stay. And so I'm singing a solo in our church, and we have a power jolt and it flips the head, and this guy's voice comes in singing the demo while I'm up there. And I'm like halfway through the song, and so my face looked like it does right now.
Yeah.
And I just went and sat down. I mean, we just stopped, there was no coming back to that.
Right,
You're done. Okay, well, that was good. Thanks. Yeah. So that would be one. I would say another place is where technology leads rather than the spirit of what you're trying to do and say in worship. For instance, would be if you have a chasing marquee, and the marquee is so animated and so brilliant throughout the course of the day that you can't take your eyes off how cool that marquee is, you have now made technology the leader instead of what you're trying to accomplish, the leader. So we always have to be aware of what we're sticking out front, and whether technology is a tool to the end or technology is the end itself. I'll give you another example. When I first began, when I was young, the model for us was giant churches. There were just a few mega churches when I first began in ministry, and in those churches, productions were the big thing, big Easter things and big Christmas things, and they were levitating camels, and they had everything that you could, and flying angels and the whole deal, and that was the 80s. And then along comes in the early 90s a guy named Matt Redman who wrote a song, and it was basically the apology song, and it said, "I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing we've made it. It's got to be all about you." And that song was massive for many, many years, and the pendulum swung where all the high production things got stripped off and erased, and put in their place were typically a 5-piece band, one alto maybe, a lead vocal, and that was what worship was for a small time frame there. And then production got a hold of that little 5-piece band, and we started adding lights and fog, and truly the spectacle that was 10 years, 15 years earlier in high production churches was now spectacle in another way, but just with better technology. Cooler stuff on stage, more high-end gear, but it swung again. So you always have to be aware of what's leading. What is your purpose leading, or is your technology leading? And guys like you that do so well with AV and love the church, you are the people that any listener needs to bring into the circle, because you're not about the gear, you're about the end purpose. Yes. And we want to bring every bit of our gear into the game and give you the best, most awesome equipment we can, but it's for this purpose right here. We're aiming for that. And you've accomplished your goal.
Right.
So,
well, and I think that, I've said it before, and me and Taylor believe it deep down in our hearts. I think the most important thing that we do is the training. Like, people can see a bunch of nice, flashy things, mm-hmm. But if they don't know how to use it in a very tasteful way, it can get, as we've said multiple times, very showy. Mm-hmm. It can get to a place where it becomes the thing,
right, rather
than God's presence mm-hmm. being the thing. Mm-hmm. And I love the opportunity every install we do. I love the opportunity to sit down with the people that are actually going to use the things mm-hmm. that we install, and just really instill in them what I feel like is going to be something that's going to enhance them rather than be a distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a fine line to walk between creating an environment and creating a spectacle.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And y'all installed some incredible equipment during y'all's renovation. But, really walking into your space now, I mean, obviously if you had been there for 30 years, you can definitely see that you stripped things down to the mm-hmm. studs, you rebuilt things in a new way, you installed a lot of nice high-end equipment, but you really wouldn't know it if you're just a newcomer coming in.
Right.
You
Feels like home now.
Yeah.
Really does.
Yeah. I mean, it's the way y'all did it was incredible.
Yeah. It's first class. But if the image on the LED wall is look at that LED wall rather than what is that saying to me right now about my walk with God right now, and that's what you want to accomplish. It's just a tool.
Yeah.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, so is a guitar. It's just a tool. And when we have arguments about organists or clarinet players or guitar players, all of them are the same. Those are just tools. They're not the end. The end is, can we all connect with God in some way in worship? That's the end. And whatever tool it takes, we tell them at our church, we say we have set the table as a banquet feast and invited everyone to come, understanding that when you arrive, you're not going to love everything at the table. Some of you folks aren't going to be into the broccoli salad, but that mashed potato bowl at the end is going to be a big deal. Or the banana pudding is what Jared's going to be jumping in after. But the idea is that all of us come and we have some place to connect, and that we also have an understanding that the guy who does love the broccoli or this over here is no better or worse than you. We're all on a common ground at the cross when we come together.
Well, and I think it's important because, like you said, everybody has their own, win. Mm-hmm. They have their own perspective on what they feel like is our church moving in a positive direction. Mm-hmm. Is it not? Me and my wife talk about it all the time. I mean, what we feel like may look good to one person may not look good to another person. Obviously we've talked about, and we have a pretty strong relationship on our production side. And what people may or may not know is we do a lot of weddings and special events, and sometimes we'll sell something and we're like, that doesn't really look good to me. Well, it may not be my style, mm-hmm. but it may be somebody else's style, and that's okay. But when it comes to the church, I mean, I think the one goal that we can all agree on is we need to have environments that invite people to the cross.
Yeah.
And doesn't matter how much or how little we use technology, we can all agree on that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And doing it, for me, my personal opinion is minimizing distractions.
Right.
We can have an incredible Myers sound system. Mm-hmm. We can have an incredible LED wall. We can have all the flashy lights. But if nobody experiences the Father in a worship service, then you might as well take it down, pack it up, and go home.
Yeah. One of our guys put together a T-shirt with a little branding called "Behind the Scene," spelled SEEN, and that was kind of to describe our tech environment. All those guys, they're not seen at all, and truthfully, in old school world, the only time you ever were seen if you're in the tech thing is if you did something wrong, and then you had to come out of wherever you were and come down and walk down the stairs and go to the stage and fix it, rewire it, go back up. But their goal is, like you said, to fade in the background and let Christ be seen, and that's our goal as well from the front.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Branding.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
This is great.
And obviously we, from you and Linda and all the kids, I mean, we just absolutely adore y'all's family and appreciate what y'all are doing for Shades and really what you've done for both on site and our new venture with Next Level, and just was honored to have you on and kind of get your perspective on everything.
I love it.
You have been through it all from Hollywood to Birmingham.
Well, I thank you for the invitation, and I want to say that to be able to know that in working with a contractor or a vendor in any environment is always a bit of flip of the coin. You don't know what you're going to get. And we have been incredibly blessed by your team, the people you bring, the quality you bring, the trust factor you bring, your people of your word, and you love the local church as well. And I mean, what better package is there? So we really feel fortunate that you guys are in our space. It helps us a bunch.
Yeah.
Just one less thing to have to worry about. Oh, on site. Oh, good. That'll be good.
Yeah. Well, we really enjoy doing it. From everything that we've had the opportunity to do, y'all have it going on, and we just really enjoy that. We never turn down opportunities to be able to spend time with you guys and be around y'all. So, but yeah. So
all right, friends.
Well, awesome. Well, Thank y'all so much. Y'all stick around. We've got a little bit left in this episode. All right. So welcome back to the Next Level Podcast. We have got product review of the week. Man, it's like my favorite time. Like, I'm just
This is where we get to talk nerd.
Yeah, just nerd out. That's it. So we actually don't have a physical product. We're going to actually talk about a piece of software that we use on a pretty consistent basis. We get questions all the time like, what kind of lighting software do you use, or what kind of presentation software? Somebody actually asked me the other day. They were like, so do you use like PowerPoint? I'm like,
oh
no. No, that's like,
come. Let me enlighten you.
Yes, that left in 1998. So, but a lighting software that we use, and people ask us about it all the time, is LightKey. When we do these product reviews, we don't get any endorsement or anything from these products. We just believe in them, and we want to share it with you. And LightKey is one of those very intuitive, easy to use, like volunteers that have never run lights before can sit down. I can show them a couple of things, and boom, they're
off to the races.
They're off and running. You used the heck out of LightKey when we were setting up Trinity
with those pixie strips.
Yeah, and it was awesome. You had to use multiple universes of DMX.
It was a task. Like, I mean, it wasn't overwhelming because I don't have that much experience with LightKey, but even I was able to program things the way they needed to be programmed and have it work correctly. And I was so proud. I'm not gonna lie.
So no, but LightKey has been a game changer. A guy that also has a YouTube. He's a YouTube creator, Jake Goslin. Is it Churchfront? Yeah, he does Churchfront. But y'all could probably go look him up. We'll put the link down in the description. But he's the first person I saw using it. And what's cool is he took LightKey and he tied it in with Ableton Live, which does his backing tracks. And it MIDI controlled, so he didn't even have a light guy, which is awesome.
That's legit.
So he has everything queued up. And recently, Michael Crane, who is at our church, did something along the same lines. And it was pretty incredible. But LightKey's a great software. It is something that you will have to purchase. There is a lot of free software out there. It is very limited and sometimes takes a rocket scientist to figure out.
I can speak to that because we at Shaco did a big renovation. I wanted to, going even further back, I didn't want to get into computer-based software because the way that workflow was at Shaco was a lot of guests that aren't necessarily skilled using the lighting system, so I wanted to be able to have a small controller and say, these are the 5 things you do.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
Lighting for Dummies. You remember them books?
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to keep it simple, but then we did this next major upgrade.
Yeah.
And it was not to be simple because it was the space that's like youth, intense, like high production. Let's do a cool light show. I knew that little Pro Control MH from Blizzard wasn't going to work. So we ended up going with a little Onyx USB. I forget what the model number was, but it was like a little controller with slide, like finger just touch faders, and a few touch keys, and it was really cool. But it literally took me like 2.5 weeks to program and put together a basic show in that Onyx Obsidian, Elation Onyx Obsidian or whatever software.
Yeah.
I felt really cool, but it was so much more. It went the opposite direction. Whereas we went super simple, it went super complicated. And Light Key, the times that I've worked with it here has been as intuitive as I needed it to be.
Well, and I hear so many people. You heard from, if y'all haven't had an opportunity to look at our YouTube channel and see Robert Sturdivant's testimony from Trinity, that's one of the things that me and him talked multiple times about. How can this be simple enough for a youth pastor to run it?
Yeah.
And that's Light Key.
Yep.
I mean, and so
outside, like past the programming, it gets even easier.
Oh yeah,
because once you have everything programmed and it's a week to week thing from that point, it's literally just buttons.
Yep,
just buttons, and you press them, click toggle on and off, or if you can set buttons together and it'll step between. Mm-hmm. If you toggle the next one, it'll deselect the previous one, and it makes it so easy. It's worth paying for, in my opinion. Like having the free software from Onyx that did probably everything that Light Key does.
Yeah. But
taking 2.5 weeks and an insane amount of YouTubing to figure out, it wasn't worth it to go free in that case.
Gotcha. Yeah. I love it. I love Light Key. It's been a game changer. So well, that kind of wraps up our episode. Had an awesome time with Mr. Michael Adler, and that was just
mind-blowing.
Yeah, mind-blowing.
Some of the things he's done and had his hands on, and he's done it all.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a fun time, and we're going to link all his information in the description. We'll link the website to Light Key, and we've got some exciting things in store, some amazing people coming onto the show in the next couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there will be weeks. We had to take a week off last week and, catch up on some things. But, that's just the life of the business we're in and everything. I wish I could just record podcast every day, but I can't.
No, right. Then we wouldn't be doing what we're talking about. So I mean,
Exactly. So, well, that kind of wraps it up. So until next time, you might hear Taylor say,
Jared, so last night I asked my dog what 2 minus 2 is.
Uh-huh.
And can you believe she said nothing?
I'm sorry. Have a good one, folks.